How's everyone hanging in there? I know it's day 2, so is everyone still feeling okay? Okay. You all are aware that you're in a talk about inbound emails too? Everyone's in the right place? Okay, just checking. So first off, just like to say thank you to the organizers and all the volunteers for putting this on. I live here in Colorado, not necessarily local, but this is about as local as it gets for me. So combining Colorado and Ruby are really two of my favorite things, and bringing people in and being able to share that is something I'm very thankful for. So thank you for having me out to speak, and thank you to all of you for making it. I know people are different countries, different states, some people's first conference. So yeah, thank you for making it out, and thank you for sitting here listening to some inbound email parsing talk. So a little bit about me. My name is Cody Norman. I'm an independent Ruby consultant, and I live in a small mountain town here in Colorado called Bailey. So another thing about me, I really love email. And I know this probably sounds a little bit odd, but email is such a powerful and flexible tool for users to be able to interact with your application in a way that they're most comfortable with. But sometimes relationships can be complicated. So as I stand here speaking to all you lovely folks today, I'm sure you also are getting buried deeper and deeper and deeper in emails. Despite their usefulness, there's a lot of different emails fighting for your attention, so it's very easy to get overwhelmed. So maybe a better way to put this is, I'm in love with the idea of email. So today I'll be covering how we can use a framework in Rails called Action Mailbox to parse inbound emails. I will show a couple of different practical use cases. We'll go over how you can send these inbound emails to your application, how they're processed, and some tips for running and deploying this in production. So first off, what is it? One of the most common things that I hear from people is, I've heard about Action Mailbox, but that's usually about it. Most people don't really know about it, but a simple explanation is Action Mailbox will route inbound emails to controller-like mailboxes for processing in your Rails app. Your application will create an inbound email record that will be later picked up and processed in the background with active job. So this provides us with a really familiar and intuitive way to handle and parse these emails and still have it feel like Rails. So basically, this gives us an endpoint that will accept request data, save it, process it in the background, and this is something that anyone in the world can submit to without requiring an account, verification, API key. Everyone can just send. We don't need a lot of the overhead that you normally have with your typical application. So, since most people don't really know much about Action Mailbox or have never really worked with it, I have a few practical examples to show you some ways that I've used it in the past, and hopefully give you some more ideas to take away for ways that you may be able to use it in your own application. So the first example, this is probably the most common one. This was one of the first ones that I set up, and has been one of the most helpful ones by far. So this is an example of how we would do something like parsing a PDF attachment that was sent in the inbound email, creating a legacy document, which is a model that I have set up in the application, and then create an active storage attachment from the attachment in the inbound email. Things like embedded images or signatures can be an issue, so this is a slightly abbreviated example, but we're able to do one of the most common tasks for applications all through email. We also have the benefit of not choking up our web server if someone tries to upload an obscenely large PDF document, which I'm sure most of you have ran into at some point. So this is also going to process it in the background We don't need views. We don't need to worry about error handling. And again, this is a way that the users can feel more comfortable, be able to get the functionality and accomplish their task without even having to log in or even see your application at all. And here we have an example of a lightweight email to SMS service. So for this example, you would include your number you would like to send the text message to in the subject of the email, and the message you would like to send in the body. So just like that, we have a standalone mailbox converting one channel to another, all in just a few lines of Ruby code. With Action Mailbox, we can also create our very own AI wrapper application. So this would be an example of sending an inbound email, parsing out the body contents of the email, sending it to OpenAI. I'm sure whichever version is up there is way outdated at this point, but this did work at some point. And these are a few different examples of how we can show off the diverse and really targeted functionality that we can accomplish with Action Mailbox. So this was a new mailbox actually set up for a demo production app that's been running live the past couple days. Some of you may have interacted with it, some of you may have not, but basically I had it set up to where we had Easter eggs and would also send you out informational emails. And this breaks it down a little bit how all that would work. So someone would email food at inbound.actionmailbox.pro or coffee and receive a transactional email back with options within a 10-minute walk from eTown. The Easter egg was in the reply to for the outbound email. So if someone replied to the email, they would either go to winner, winner, lunch or dinner, or def before decaf at the application site. The first one to email in would receive a gift card back. And if you figured out the Easter egg and you tried to email back in afterwards, you would see that the promotion or the deal has already expired. And this is the actual code that was running the production app. So this is not cleaned up as much as I would like it to be. But with 3 or 4 days of live use in a production environment and a handful of gross if-else statements, we were able to add a usable and functional feature that didn't require people to sign up or confirm their email. They were just able to interact with it and then get the benefit from it. So now that you have a few different ideas of ways that you can use Action Mailbox in your application, let's take a look at what happens when an inbound email is sent and how it's going to be processed to your Rails application. So this is the overall flow of what happens when an inbound email is sent to your mail provider. If you look at the documentation, they will refer to this as an ingress. I'll be using ingress and email service provider a little interchangeably here, just because I feel most people have a better idea of email service provider. So for this example, we send the inbound email, Postmark or your chosen provider will receive it. They do a little bit of processing, send an inbound webhook to your Rails application. Then we authorize it. We create a new Action Mailbox inbound email. It's routed and then finally sent to the mailbox for processing. So taking a little deeper look into some of the steps here, it all begins with sending an inbound email. And again, this is done with your chosen mail client, so we don't have to worry about browser compatibility or a lot of the other things that you may run into with typical applications. And we also have the benefit of leveraging email. So things like offline messages or sending or receiving whenever you reconnect are all kind of handled automatically by your email client. So after your service provider receives the email, each one is a little bit different. typically they'll do a little bit of processing and then send a webhook request with the data to your Rails application. Because it's all webhook based, in a pinch, you can actually upload a ngrok or some other type of secure shell to allow the actual mail service to send these inbound emails to your local environment. So it gives us tools that we're comfortable with and that we're all able to work with in a pretty familiar way. And this is the point where the Rails application actually takes over and will handle everything throughout the rest of the process. So the application receives the webhook. If you see here at the bottom, we see action mailbox, and then password. This is how the webhook will authenticate the request. So we set this value in either the encrypted credentials, or you could set an environment variable that maps to that password. So now that you all are so excited about Action Mailbox, right, yeah, I can tell by the laughs. So to get started, again, it's a really familiar Rails process. We run the generators, then we will set up our routing to tell it how to deliver it to a specific mailbox, and then implement the parsing logic. Like most great Rails tools, we have some nice generators to get everything set up and installed. This is pretty much it. So in 2 commands, we can get 80% of the way to having a working inbound email parsing application bolted on to our existing Rails app or for a new Rails application. One thing that I see tripping a lot of people up, if you notice here, after we run the install command, you may notice that active storage is installed. And the reason for that is Action Mailbox will save the raw data from the inbound email request as an active storage attachment. And I've noticed this catches a lot of people off guard and can be responsible for some odd issues once you move everything to production. But I'll have a little bit more on that towards the end. So this is one of the migrations that gets created after running our generator. And this is the kind of the bread and butter of the Action Mailbox application. This creates the inbound emails table. And looking at everything, it's pretty straightforward. For something like email, I feel like most people kind of write it off as weird or complicated or something that doesn't feel like they're used to. But looking at this, we just have a status, which will tell you whether it needs to be processed, whether it's bounced, a message ID to ensure that each message is going to be unique. And don't see it here, but there's also the raw data attachment that attaches the email data to the inbound email object. Besides the migrations, running the generators will also create an application mailbox for you. This is where all of the routing for our emails will take place. So you'll see the generated file includes a commented out example of how you would match and route one of these inbound emails to a specific mailbox. So once everything is set up, we have everything in place to begin generating these individual mailboxes that's going to contain the business logic for actually parsing out the email. Everything is going to take place within the process method. And if you've ever worked with ActiveJob, it's going to feel really similar. We have a lot of the same benefits like before hooks, and everything is kind of contained within this process method. So again, we're sticking to patterns that feel really comfortable and familiar to most Rails developers. So moving on to the next step here, once your application has received the inbound email, it will actually process it asynchronously. So we won't be processing the email right away. What happens is we save the inbound email. The bulk of the data is stored in the raw data attachment, which is for active storage. And then we enqueue a job to be processed later. And this is where a lot of the magic happens. One of my favorite things is the fact that a model that's responsible for the majority of functionality for this subframework in Rails can fit on a single slide. So let's look into a little more detail about some of these different sections. So after our table definition, we have a few different concerns being included here. The first one, incineratable, will ensure that the inbound email is scheduled for incineration whenever the status has been changed to processed. So because the inbound emails are stored as an active storage attachment, this is going to automatically make sure that your S3 bucket doesn't overflow with emails after however long you've had it running. So within 30 days, the raw data from the email will be automatically deleted and cleaned up. So one less thing that you have to worry about. And again, the message ID is to ensure that there's a unique identifier for each email. This is how we can identify one email and link them to others and be able to determine if it's a reply to a single email or part of a longer thread or chain of emails. And finally, the routable concern is what handles routing the inbound email to our mailbox and then finally delivering it to its final destination in the mailbox for processing. So here's the raw email active storage attachment I mentioned earlier. So this is going to be stored from the mail data that gets sent from the email service provider. It's pretty equivalent to, if you've ever worked with the Ruby mail object, just calling mail.toS. So if you see all that output, that's basically what we're going to save in this raw email active storage attachment. And you can see we also have, we're specifying the service here. So if, say, you want to use maybe a less durable or cheaper solution just for parsing these emails, we can also set this up to go to a specific destination and not have to worry about it dealing with our main active storage service that we may have set up. And here are a few examples of how you might use some of the methods that were defined in this class. So if we call raw email, this is going to return the active storage attachment created from the raw email data. Source will convert the raw email data to a string. And this is really helpful because this will allow us to pass it into the Rails conductor, which has a source option. So we can hand it a giant blob of text that basically maps to the email, and it will simulate it sending to our application in our development environment. And for mail, when we're in the context of the actual mailbox, calling mail just returns a normal mail message in Ruby. So this would be the same one that you use in Active Mailer or any other mail service that you may have interacted with or had to use with Ruby before. So now we have a little bit more background on the Action Mailbox inbound email and how it's created. Let's look at how the inbound email will be routed to the mailbox for its final processing. So again, the job is added and created after we receive the inbound email and processed in the background. Your application mailbox is basically like the post office for your Action Mailbox app. It's going to receive all of your inbound emails and decide where and how to route it to its final destination. This is a real example from a snippet of the public the public mailboxes for the production app that I set up. So one of the things that you may notice, we're using a pretty light regex for most of these options, but at the bottom here, we're using the all method. So this ensures that if we don't have a match by the time we get to the bottom, any and all emails that get to that point will be routed to the promotions. So this is a great way to set up something like a catch-all mailbox or an unroutable email mailbox to ensure that whenever you do get these emails, you can at least have some type of manual intervention before marking them as bounced or failed or whatever. So this gives us a way to capture everything and be able to kind of Ruby our way out of a problem if we need to. So after we route the inbound email to the mailbox, this is when we begin the actual business logic or processing of the email. And this is where all the magic happens. Everything is going to be contained within that single process method. And again, if you've worked with ActiveJob, this is going to feel very familiar, has a lot of the same lifecycle hooks that we can run either before or after the processing of the email to ensure that all of our data is either set up correctly or torn down correctly. Action Mailbox also provides us with a really handy method called bounce with. And what this will do, this will automatically mark the inbound email as bounced, so we don't try to reprocess it. It also gives us a easy way to query for any type of inbound email that may have bounced. And it takes a Rails mailer and it uses that mailer to reply back to the sender to alert them of the bounce. So again, we have a nice one-liner to mark the email as bounced and also alert the sender of the status of the failed email. So here's an example of how you might combine the before processing lifecycle hook with the bounce with method. So this is a pretty common use case. Action Mailbox is great, but you may not want to randomly accept attachments from anyone who emails into you. So for this example, before we do any processing in the mailbox, this ensure user method is going to run. So for this, we're going to parse out the sender's email address, and we're going to see if we have a valid user from it. And if not, we're going to use the bounce with method, pass it the mailer, and mark the email as bounced, and alert the sender all in one line. And what good is a toy without batteries? Now that you all know so much about Action Mailbox, you're going to want to deploy it somewhere. And Rails provides some great options right out of the box. There's also some third-party gems available for other services like Amazon SES. But these ingresses are basically a collection of controllers that are specific to the provider and allow you to focus on the business logic. So you don't have to re-implement everything if you decide to switch mail providers basically at any time. So now that we're deploying our Action Mailbox app to production, there's a few potential pitfalls that you may want to watch out for. So the first one, because the inbound email is stored as an active storage attachment, your active storage URL options won't be set by default. So if you're trying to create a new attachment or return some type of link, normally the active storage URL options are set somewhere in your application controller. But since we're processing the email in the context of a job, many times that value isn't set. So checking to make sure that your active storage URL options are set before you try to generate new attachments or send those out is an easy way to save yourself a lot of headaches. Another option is you'll probably want to set up something besides disk for your active storage service. Most of the time, this will be issues if you're deploying your application to somewhere like Heroku, especially if you're running Sidekick in the background. So whenever the inbound email is processed, it's going to look for the actual file that's on your web dyno. so it won't be able to find it, and it'll throw an error, and you pull your hair out and wonder why you can't get this thing to work. Personal experience. The other big tip that I really suggest to everyone is right from the beginning, plan on routing your inbound emails through some type of subdomain. This can really be anything, but it makes it much easier to diagnose any type of DNS issues that you may be running into when setting everything up. And it also prevents yourself from breaking your existing MX records and not having your email work. Again, personal experience. So, we've covered some practical examples, but this being a Ruby conference, I thought it would be only proper to send people away with some impractical examples. So, what follows are some of the goofiest, impractical, and weird ideas I could possibly think of and get working around inbound emails. So I hope this, one, gives you all a little bit of entertainment, but really, I hope this sparks some ideas for some ways that you can take away and maybe relate it to your own application to create your own features, weird or not. Okay, this one is actually live, very lightly tested, but CatFax on demand. This QR code should work, but by sending an inbound email to cat-fax@inbound.actionmailbox.pro, we'll make a request to a CatFax API, take the response, and then email it back to you. And this is what that would look like in the context of the actual mailbox. So in only a handful of lines, we're able to create our very own automated CatFax as a service platform. I'm still waiting for funding. If anyone has any leads, you can let me know afterwards. The age guesser. It always seems to guess older. So just, this is not something I personally set up, but this will reach out to the Ageify API and try to guess your age based on your email. And how we do that is this will actually parse out the display name for your email. So if you have that set up, we'll try to pull that out. And if not, we're gonna split the string of the email address, and we're gonna take the first portion so we at least have something to send over. And again, this is a live mailbox. This is the exact code that should be interacting with the email address that you all would send into. But we we make the request with HTTP party. We have our URL. And at the bottom here, this name method, we're going to try two different ways to try to pull out the display name. So the first one, you'll see this is mail, and then we're passing a bracket with from. This is a mail field, which is a little bit different than some of the other mail methods that you may run into. But this is how we can parse out just the first and the last name if you have that set in your email, and we send that out. So this is a way that we can get additional information from the user without requiring them to do anything extra. All they have to do is send an email, and we're going to do our best to figure out their name and then send it to the API for a guess and then reply back. This is where it starts to get more and more impractical. Mail yourself a postcard reminder. So I don't know if any of you have maybe emailed yourself a reminder or a note or something at a conference, and then by the time you get home, it's way down in your inbox, and you can't really find it. This takes the impractical approach. This one's not set up live. But this takes the impractical approach of parsing out the body of your reminder email and will actually send a physical postcard to your house. So now we're taking our digital email and crowding up our physical mailbox as well. This is using the Lob API. This was working at some point. It's been a couple months since I've tested it, but this takes an image, which is an S3 bucket that we have set up, and the message. You have to do some very specific HTML for all the layout, but by sending an email like this, we would eventually get something like this in our mailbox, 5 to 7 days. Extremely impractical, but a lot of fun. Speaking of impractical and a lot of fun, this is my favorite example by far. This is an abbreviated example for obvious reasons. But a few months ago, I discovered the remote start and monitoring device on my truck has some undocumented API endpoints. And I started wondering if I would be able to integrate these with emails somehow. So for this example, the truck mailbox, you would just send inbound email to truck at whatever, and actually have it make a request to the remote start API and fire up my truck. I think this is a great example of a problem that we don't need to solve, but we really want to. And I think those are some of the best problems that programmers deal with, when you want something to work because you want this to exist, whether it's useful or not. This was a lot of fun to get working. I know that the slide probably looks really nice and all that, but it doesn't quite do it justice. Let's see how it turned out. Here we have my 2006 Toyota Tacoma, outfitted with an aftermarket remote start. I'm going to send an inbound email to our truck mailbox, and with any luck, be able to start the truck. You may have noticed there's no keys in the ignition here. I'm going to try to send an inbound email to the truck mailbox. Will probably take a couple minutes for it to complete the process, but if everything goes well, we should be able to start the truck here. So let's see. Email sent. Now we wait. Sure it's sent. That, my friends, is the weirdest thing that I've done with inbound email, and why I love Action Mailbox. If you happen to be staying at the Boulderado and look across the street, you may notice this machine. Again, it's not hooked up. Don't send the email. But it is one of the weirdest things I've actually been able to get working by sending an inbound email. So you may have a complicated relationship with email, but that doesn't mean your application has to. So in a handful of slides, we've been able to cover everything from API responses, document uploads, postcard reminders, and even starting a truck. And these are all things that people can do without requiring registration or even having to look at your application. And these are a few of the reasons why I love Action Mailbox and hope you all begin to feel some of the love too. So these are a couple of ways to find me. You can find me at my website and on Twitter. If you would like to reach out, be more than happy to connect with any of you. And since everyone is going to ask, one more Action Mailbox inbound email setup. If you email slides at inbound.actionmailbox.pro, you will receive a link for the slides, probably from 11 or so. I'm a incessant tinkerer with my slides, so they may be a little bit outdated, but this will email you back the speaker deck where the slides are already uploaded so you can have access to those whenever you get home. And that's it. Thank you. The question was, how many emails did it take to actually get the truck part working? I lost track. This was something that I tried to have ready for RailsConf. I think I left on Monday. This was recorded Friday at 4:30 p.m. So this was my last ditch effort. But luckily, the API had a couple of easier endpoints to kind of interact with. There was a lock and an unlock one, and then I think one that would return the battery level. So I kind of played with those first without having to burn out the battery on my truck. And once I was able to get a couple of those working, I would, at least kind of assuming that I would be able to. And then to make sure that my truck doesn't get started whenever someone sends me a spam inbound email, to actually get everything working, I ran everything through ngrok on my local setup. So as soon as it was done, recorded, killed the ngrok server, and no one has access to that URL ever again, thankfully. So that's one thing where I really try to lean on the mail provider. They do a lot of like scanning and the DKIM and SPIF verification. A lot of that information is going to be in the headers of the emails. So it lets you get as granular as like you feel like you may need to. But we can also kind of lean on a few assumptions. Like when someone sends us an inbound email, we can probably assume that that's a valid email and send it back. And if not, it's kind of on them. They're the one that's spoofing everything. So for the security thing, if you start to get a little hesitant about just randomly accepting stuff, the before processing hook is your best bet to start refining everything. Check for a valid user account. You can check that there is an attachment. Check that the attachment is a PDF or CSV or whatever type. So in the lifecycle hooks, this gives you a chance to verify everything is there and is at least secure enough before you begin the processing. The question was, is there a way that we can receive the emails directly and kind of circumvent or skip the email service providers? So yes and no. We would be able to do that. I think that's how a lot of the inbound email processing was done prior to Action Mailbox. Basically just webhook data that gets sent to your application. So as long as you have some type of endpoint to field that request and some way to parse it's usually the raw attachment data because it has to match the official email spec, then you should be able to save it. So with the string, we can create a Ruby mail object from there and then forward that on to yourself or forward that to your support team. And then that's the point where it starts feeling more like Action Mailer instead of Mailbox. So this gives us a way to be able to handle that easily.
All right, one more question.
Yes.
Is there any like first-class support for calendar attachments?
I don't believe so. I know that there are, I've used a few of the gems that are out there to send the attachments in the different calendar formats in there. But your reply is basically like a normal email. So if you're able to generate the ICS attachment or one of the other ones, you could include that in the email. But I've also found that most of the email clients are also smart enough. If you put a date in there, it'll normally turn into like a little hover where you can automatically add that to your calendar. So that's another way where we can leverage what's already there in the email clients and not have to kind of build everything from scratch.
Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.